When a millionaire installed secret cameras to catch his nanny doing something wrong, he never expected the footage would expose his own heart instead. Mark Whitmore's mansion stood like a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the city. From its floor-to-ceiling windows, you could see the skyline stretching endlessly, the blinking lights of other towers reflecting off the polished marble floors. To most, it was the perfect symbol of success, a self-made millionaire who had climbed from nothing to everything. But inside, the silence was heavy. It had been that way ever since his wife died 3 years ago, leaving behind their only child, 6-year-old Ethan. Mark had thrown himself into work after that. It was easier to lose himself in spreadsheets, deals, and business dinners than to face the grief that waited for him at home. Ethan, a quiet, sensitive boy with his mother's green eyes, often played alone in his big room filled with toys he rarely touched. When Mark passed his door late at night, he sometimes heard soft humming or the faint clatter of toy cars. But he never went in. "They'll spend time with him on the weekend," he always told himself. The weekend never came. When Mark finally decided to hire a nanny, it was out of practicality, not affection. He needed someone to feed Ethan, take him to school, and make sure the house didn't fall apart in his absence. The agency sent Claire, a young woman in her late 20s with warm eyes and a calm smile. She wasn't flashy, but there was something steady about her presence. Ethan, who usually avoided strangers, took to her almost immediately. He would hold her hand when they crossed the garden, and his laughter started to fill the house again. At first, Mark was relieved, but soon whispers began to reach him. The housekeeper, Mrs. Collins, mentioned that she'd seen Claire doing strange things when he was gone, sitting too close to Ethan, whispering things, even crying once while holding his photo. Mark didn't know why, but a quiet irritation began to build inside him. He told himself it was just professional concern. After all, he had a duty to protect his son. Yet underneath that, jealousy stirred, the kind a father feels when realizing someone else is giving his child the comfort he himself had neglected to give. That night, Mark sat in his dim office, swirling a glass of whiskey. His reflection in the window looked older than he remembered. Tired eyes, a frown etched permanently into his face. He opened his laptop and began searching for discreet home security systems. Within days, cameras were installed throughout the house, in the living room, the kitchen, the hall, and Ethan's playroom. Only he knew where they were hidden. Claire and Ethan had no idea. The first few days, Mark barely checked the footage. He told himself he was too busy, but deep down, he wasn't sure he wanted to see what was really happening. One Friday evening, after another long meeting, he came home past midnight. The house was dark, except for the small lamp in Ethan's room. He poured himself a drink and opened the camera feed on his tablet. At first, nothing unusual. Claire was reading a bedtime story, her voice soft and clear. Ethan listened, eyes heavy with sleep. When she finished, she turned off the light and sat quietly beside his bed. Then Ethan spoke, voice trembling. "Claire, why doesn't Daddy like me anymore?" Mark felt his stomach tighten. He leaned forward, the ice in his glass clinking. Claire looked at the boy, brushing his hair gently. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "Your daddy loves you very much. He's just lost. Sometimes adults forget what's most important. But he loves you, I promise." Ethan's lip trembled. "He never hugs me. He never comes to my soccer games." Claire smiled sadly. "Maybe you should tell him how you feel. Write him a letter. Tell him you miss him. Sometimes people just need a reminder." Ethan nodded slowly, rubbing his eyes. Claire pulled a notepad from the nightstand and handed him a pencil. Together, they began writing, small, uneven letters across the page. "I miss you, Dad," Ethan said aloud as he wrote. "I love you." Mark sat frozen. The room around him blurred. He hadn't expected this. He had expected betrayal, laziness, maybe even manipulation. But what he saw instead was kindness, patience, and a tenderness he hadn't shown in years. When Ethan finally fell asleep, Claire tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "He'll come around, little one. I'll make sure of it." Then she left the room quietly. Mark replayed the footage again and again, unable to stop watching. His chest ached as memories flooded back. His wife holding Ethan as a baby, his promise to always protect them both. The day of the funeral when Ethan's small hand clutched his sleeve and he had pulled away, unable to bear the weight of his own grief. He realized then how far he had drifted, not just from his son, but from the person he once was. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows. Claire was making pancakes, humming softly while Ethan sat at the table, drawing. Mark stood in the doorway watching them, feeling like a stranger in his own home. When Claire noticed him, she straightened quickly, nervous. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore," she said. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to Ethan, knelt beside him, and gently placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Hey, champ," he said quietly. "What are you drawing?" Ethan looked up, surprised. "It's us," he said shyly. "You and me. And Mom in the sky," Mark's voice cracked. "It's beautiful." He swallowed hard, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the letter Ethan had written. "I found this," he whispered. "You really miss me that much?" Ethan nodded. Mark pulled him into his arms, holding him tightly for the first time in what felt like forever. Claire turned away, wiping her eyes. In that moment, the cameras, the suspicions, the loneliness, all of it seemed meaningless. What mattered was the warmth of his son's small arms around his neck, and the realization that love wasn't something you could monitor through a lens. You had to show up, to be there every single day. For the first time in years, Mark stayed home that morning. He made breakfast with Ethan, listened to his stories and laughed. A real, unguarded laugh that echoed through the quiet house. Claire smiled softly from across the room, knowing her job had done something no paycheck ever could. She had helped heal a family's broken heart. Mark didn't tell anyone about the cameras after that. He didn't need to. The footage had already shown him everything he needed to see, not about the nanny, but about himself.